Alright, I'm having sleeping problems again. I've had these off and on throughout my life. I remember the second year I lived in Taiwan, I had them really bad. Maybe it has to do with stress. I've also been living with a weird sleep schedule lately. So yeah, just gonna go for a walk. Probably stop at 7-Eleven. Maybe go walk by the river. It's kind of foggy, so it might be interesting looking. So yeah, this is a small city in Japan. Yeah, feels like it. I don't know, I'm just having issues falling asleep lately. Probably just stressed out. So I'm gonna go for a walk towards the river. I'm gonna take the long way along the main street. It's quicker to cut through a lot of the smaller back roads, but a lot of them are kind of dark. That one's not bad. These aren't the really small roads though. So this area is Aramachi, which is part of the modern Mocha, but historically Mocha was broken into a bunch of different areas, which are now the districts. So this is Aramachi. So a lot of Aramachi was actually destroyed, but because it was where the samurai lived, it actually is a little more open and less crowded. But then Meiji era, the beginning of the Meiji era, a lot of it got destroyed, and so it got rebuilt, and so they kept it actually very open. So it has these larger streets, very open. The former castle is down that way. That's where the school is now. The school is built over the former castle grounds. So as we go through here, this is actually pretty much, they put a paved road over what used to be the main road traveling through Aramachi. So you can't quite see it. So the former castle is actually down there. Basically, when they were building the waterworks here, the outflow from the farm fields was directed into the castle moat, which then eventually drained into the Gogyogawa River. So this part of Mocha is kind of interesting because it's more built like blocks. And you'll see this in a lot of areas. You can kind of tell what got totally destroyed and rebuilt, because wider roads, wider sidewalks, more of a block. The stuff that has basically maintained its shape for generations, 200, 300, 400 years now, there were twistier, not as block formation. Yeah, it really is when you get into some of the weird history that's going on about the designs here. The other advantage is sometimes areas that were samurai residents, they already were a little more blocky anyways. If you look at the old maps and you can find an example, they had more space, they were a little more blocked out anyways. You know, they had their manor houses and such, if the design, they were usually kind of square to rectangle. So that kind of encouraged the roads to head in that direction as far as design. But in this part of the city, there's nothing that's really, well, there's not much that's really old. There's an old merchant's house, actually, which is pretty interesting. Not open right now, obviously, so we can't go there. So here, we'll get to this intersection in a second. It's kind of interesting. Despite almost being midnight, there's still quite a few people out. Empty lots. Yeah, green light. So this intersection here is kind of interesting because it sort of gained prominence over time due to how the train tracks were set up. So this, if you follow the road all the way down, that way, noisy car, of course is turning. So if you follow that all the way down, it gets you to the Kitamoka station, the first crossing after Kitamoka station. So the crossing that was built like when cars were relatively new, and it was designed more for foot traffic, so you can get across the tracks, but you go from a pretty decent sized road to, yeah, the cars can cross one at a time. Mostly because the crossing was built when cars were not as common and lots of people were crossing on foot or with animals. There's a lot of those crossings left over that just they never got expanded. It was never either seen worth expanding the cross, or it was just too much of a pain. So you have these crossings that, oh yeah, a car can get across one at a time, and then it gets to, a 2-lane road. Or it'll just be some tiny foot crossing. That used to be a sushi place. They've turned it into a gym, but I liked the sushi. Hospital. Oh yeah, the security alarm on that thing is way too sensitive. So every time someone walks on the sidewalk, the security alarm goes off, and I'm sure the guard hates it. Let's keep heading towards the river. So yeah, this is the main road. It travels, so historically, long ago, it basically traveled from the main shrine, which is down this way, Osaki Jinja, to the castle, which is back the way we came. This was the main thoroughfare between the two of them. So during ceremonies, Matsuri, they'd be stalking the during ceremonies, particularly during summer festivals, they actually do lots of parading along this road, which is actually a lot of fun. I think I did a live stream of part of the Matsuri festival. I've done a video about it in the past, but that was a Matsuri from years ago. Every year in the summer when we get close to Matsuri, it starts trending again. Well, I mean, it picks up like 10 or 15 views, which is a lot for my channel. Ugh, surprisingly foggy. I took a video once. There was a parade, and it was like an early parade. So there's a foot sky bridge coming up soon. That, because of its color, does not show up very well on camera. Yeah, here we go. So there's a footbridge over the road, which sometimes if they're doing parades here, they usually close it. But if you're really lucky, they don't, or you get early enough they haven't closed it yet. You can take some pictures or video from up there. Little canal, really dark. Something's on. It's just not good filming. So yeah, there you can see the lights. There's 7-Eleven. Potomoto. I always find having difficulty sleeping if I go outside and I walk for like half an hour to an hour. I'm finally able to sleep. I don't know why. Maybe I've just been inside too long. Let me explain everything. Yeah, so I think I did some shorts of it. The drumming performances at Matsuri here. That's one of the places they used. So it was here. And then like that last charge at the on the last day of Matsuri here, they start about here, somewhere in this area, depending on each year. It's not one set place. Having pushed at Matsuri before, I will say, my God, is it exciting, that last charge. You're like, yay, I'm almost done. All right, I'm gonna grab something at 7-Eleven. I don't know if you're allowed to film at 7-Eleven. I'm not gonna film at 7-Eleven. I'm just gonna put the camera off to the side. It's Japan. It's small city Japan. Nobody thinks they let. Actually, you know, it's a small city in Japan. When there was like a big news thing about there was a fight at this 7-Eleven, like 2 o'clock. It was a big news thing here. There was a fight at this 7-Eleven at 2 o'clock in the morning. And the last place I filmed this is Sandy. So, alright, we'll be back soon. One with a hard cider. Not that you can even see it in the dark. The school I work for they really get into Halloween. And so it's like, okay, that's great. But it means a lot of decorating and setting up at one location for 1 week and then another location for the other week. Well, normally, except for like the place I work for has basically slowly gotten worse, is the best way to put it. I come across, unfortunately. Well, so now the weeks are like split where, oh, well, yes, we're doing Halloween at one location some days, but then we're doing regular teaching at the other location some days in the same week. So it's very chaotic. Yesterday we spent, I don't know, 4.5, almost 5 hours setting up at one location, which would be cool, except for one of the teachers isn't there because he's kind of management's golden boy. So, he's one of those people that this week where it's like, wow, we're not going to have him work 4 hours setting things up because he worked 1 hour this morning. Yeah, that type of place. So, pay sucks. Job's not that good. It's one of those things where it's like, actually, I didn't even fully pay my bills. It's one of those places where it's kind of like, you know, all right, you're one of the only employers in this little city for English teachers. My kid likes the school she's at. We've settled in here. It's also part of why we're like, all right, maybe we're going to leave Japan. Time to have a break. But yeah, the river's quite foggy. The worst part is, it'd almost be easier if the place had always sucked. But when I first worked there, it was actually a really great place to work. There were 3 partners that owned the place. One of the partners, he decided that he wanted to move back to Canada. And, you know, after he left, the place had a slow slide downhill. And then there was this teacher that left, and the 2 remaining owners basically jumped the shark. And so now it's been one of those places where the last over a year now, it's just like, oh my God, I don't want to be here. I want to leave this place. But yeah, off to the left is the Gogilgallo River, which, because it's dark, you can't see that well. It's also slightly foggy. It's a little eerie with the fog, so it's kind of cool looking. And then I'm on the upper path. So there's actually 2 paths. You can't see the other one. There was a path right along the river that has not been maintained on this side, so it's actually pretty overgrown. A few times the river has flooded up to that level. It's mostly used by people trying to access the rivers for some reason now, so fishermen and such. And then there's this path up here, which is at the top of the embankment. So if this gets flooded, well, these people over here have a problem. Also, his lights better maintained. There's the last live I did. I was basically on this trail, but going north. Now I'm on this trail. I'm going south through the city. I think I did one where I went a little ways south out of the city proper. Actually, I know I've done more than one. 2 live streams ago, I think that was. So yeah, anybody in chat, if you've got questions, you want to know my thoughts about anything, just ask. might not know the answer. I might just have to give you a guess. All right, next up is one of the footbridges. One of the parks. One of the nice things about this city is it has lots of parks. I'm not sure the history behind all the parks, whether these were like some type of structure that the city took over, you know, when the prefectural municipal law came in. Basically, that was the law that transferred a lot of property of the clans and daimyos, so the samurai rulers of Japan, to the municipalities. So the elementary school next to our home, that was the daimyo, that was the local lord's property, basically a castle, a moat, surrounding areas. So when that system collapsed, when the Tokugawas lost power and the Meiji government took over, that property was transferred from the samurai lord, daimyo, to the municipality. And they built a school on it. And they built a park on it. And there's actually a lot of schools that are like that. They're built on former castles. Actually, kind of a cool use of them. There's a little bit of that, you know, when you take over and you become the new government. Well, what do I do with this old thing? We don't need castles anymore. We got cannons, modern firearms. Well, I mean, they had cannons during the Edo period, but quality was a little different. And there was also a bit of a technology that the Tokugawas kind of wanted to focus in their own hands. Having cannons. Didn't do much against modern artillery that was coming out in that period. A few castles were also taken over by the new army. So some of them were used as military headquarters for a while. There's very, very few original castles in Japan. Pretty much all the ones that you see are reconstructions. So, for example, the one we went to in Izuwakamatsu Castle, that is a reconstruction. And they just reconstructed the keep. In Utsunomiya, the remains of the Utsunomiya Castle, the keep, they rebuilt the gateway, 2 towers, and some walls. Basically the wall between them. Part of it is a lot of times the outer areas of these castles themselves, they got turned into something. In Utsunomiya, a lot of them are actually houses now, businesses, stores, shops, built over what used to be the castle. And Izuwakamatsu, actually, even which, you know, we think of like, oh, we're going to go there, we're going to visit the castle. The outer grounds of the castle were also turned into various, a lot of them government buildings. There's a museum that's on one of them. I think the north side of it, where all those cafes and restaurants are, I think those were part of the castle too. I think those were part of the outer works. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. cider's pretty good. Is it non-alcoholic? Oh, it is a non-alcoholic cider. Okay, cool. Oh, there's the fire department over there. Gotta point it out more when we get there. Lights are starting to get less frequent on the trail too, which is kind of funny because we're getting closer to the center of the city. And a red light. I probably could run this red. Yeah, so you notice when we get to this part of the city compared to earlier that the roads are actually less straight. And some of that is because this area was more historically, back in the Edo period, this was a merchant area. This is where the merchants lived, if I remember correctly, or maybe it was maybe it was the craftsmen. So the Aramachi area, the first area we were in, that was very much the samurai lived there, and that was their neighborhood. They kept, away. Not away, that's the wrong word. They kept separate segregation. They practiced segregation. They segregated themselves away from the other classes. And basically, the closer you were to your lord or your dynamo, the more important you were. And in turn, it's feudalism. The closer the lords were to the dynamo, the more important they were. And the closer the dynamos were to the shoguns, the more important they were. Now, once you're starting to get to, how close you are to the dynamo, how close you are to the shogun, this might not be literal physically. This could also be metaphorically. The date were very close and very important to the shogun, but they were not physically close to him. But there was also, some of the ones that were a lot more antagonistic towards the shogun. Some of them were further away, like the Chosokabe and the Satsuma. There we go, we're almost to City Hall. That's the fire department. So that tower there is actually for scaling training. I think I'll end this at City Hall. It'll be about 40 minutes. And I can cut through the back ways to home, which won't be that interesting on camera. Yeah, so we have this dark stretch here along the river, and then everything's lit up again. So that one on the left there, that's City Hall. This one over here, this is the new library that they've been working on for a while. So like, yeah. Well, okay, I'll say Mocha, the city, does have high taxes. This is part of what it pays for, because the city hall is relatively new. There's a new library. There's also probably some lingering financial effects for the fact that the city put a lot of money into the Ashikaga Bank, and the Ashikaga Bank, well, that went belly up. That was a painful financial lesson for some cities here about how much money do you really want to put into these. And I actually talked a bit about it in my video on Kinakawa Onsen, and about how, unfortunately, during the bubble years, there was some bad investments that were made, and that the municipalities were part of that. A lot of the municipalities were, not a lot, some of the municipalities were heavily in debt to these banks. Actually, they weren't. It wasn't that they were in debt. It was that they were heavily involved with these banks, and that they'd put their own money into these ventures in partnerships with the banks, and the banks were their line of credit for these businesses that were, kind of relied on by the cities, particularly some of the more smaller touristy ones like Kinagawa Onsen. Anyways, the library is opening next year. They're doing like all the upstairs stuff now. The building construction is fine. There's City Hall. You know what I would love to do someday? On a day not like today, it's not cloudy, is actually sunset or sunrise at City Hall up on the balcony. But it is so foggy that today is not that day. Alright, everybody, if you're watching, thank you for watching. It's a 35-minute mark, so I'm going to close this down. If you're watching the replay, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you on our next adventure.